Hello all, Nice Joe here. I hope you're all having a good day. Today we're doing a comparison between a real Brown Cortex XL and a clone from China. Is USA made? Is not. I've done this video actually a couple times, but I wasn't happy with it, so I'm back. You haven't seen it more than once, but I have. So, yeah. Basically, I want to compare in a good amount of detail even the minute differences between the real thing and the copy. Both of these knives are not without issue. And I'll be completely straight up front with this thing. This knife, I'm going to contact Brown and see if I can't send it back in to be worked on. Probably needing a reblade. Because the blade on this thing is a bit wonky. First of all, pretty heavily off-center. Second of all, if it was just that, I would be like, it's a custom, fine. And it's a hollow, so it's tricky. But the fuller on the spine, it's very hard to tell over the camera, but it goes kind of off to this side. It is curved and shaky and sits heavily off, leaning off to this side. So you got it leaning off to this side here and leaning off to this side in the tip. And then it also came with an edge that looked like this. Now, when you run your fingernail along it, it's not bumpy or gritty, but that is not the greatest finish on the edge. And again, any one of these things would not be an issue. Heck, if it was just the edge, I just put a new edge on it. But all three of these things coming for an $800 plus custom, no. So I'm probably going to have to contact them to get that squared away. This, however, has its own issues, but of course it's much, much cheaper coming from China. Yeah, it is what it is. It's still not bad. Both of them are good. Different, and clearly better executed on the part of the real one, but still fine in their own ways. Now, speaking of own ways, let's get started with the comparison, and we can start that off by looking at the spine of the blade, and as you can see, the clone protrudes. The blade does not sit nearly as deeply into the handle on the fake as it does on the real one. You know what? I don't even want to say fake because this thing was not marketed or labeled as a real one. Like, yes, they called it a Cortex, but at the same time, before that, they had their own brand name, that Jewel Fuel or whatever it was. So they weren't clearly saying that this was a real knife. It is a clone. But the blade doesn't seat quite as deeply. Now, funny enough, that actually give you a little bit more room for the reverse lick. You can go a little bit lower, where on this one you have to be in this slightly higher position. Is it a big deal? No. The detents are very similar. This one feels a little bit more snappy, while this one feels like it's heavier, but like it has a little bit more of a gradual angle, so it slides out a little bit more than the snappy poppy one. So despite being heavier, this is still a more satisfying kind of detent. Not bad though. Like that if this was just blind, this would not be bad in any way, shape, or form on the detent. They both use this top flipper kind of thing going, and that's one major difference, is the jimping. The jimping on both, not great. Doesn't provide much in the way of traction. But the jimping on the real one is very shallow and very smooth. This actually has a little bit more depth to it on this clone. However, it doesn't really provide any more traction, so it's negligible. To finish talking about the blade real quick, we'll look at the finishes on the blade. And as you can see, this has a very heavy belt satin, while this one has it's a belt satin, but it is much finer, much less noticeable. Like, this is much more dramatic looking. It also, the real one has a stonewash up here and like a heavy stonewash in the fuller, while this one has more of like that satin and like maybe a blasting or something. One thing I will give both credit for is they both are hollow ground and come down to about 6 thousandths behind the edge. These things are wicked thin, even with the edge weirdness. they're laser beams. I mean, there is no doubt about that. I gotta give them props, actually, for taking it as thin as it did on this copy. The plunge grind on the real one drops basically down immediately, so yes, it's better. This one slopes down, but if we were to get this kind of plunge grind on most knives, sloping only this far and having give it this much life, I'd still be happy with it. So, better, not bad. Now, the blade material is different, and I have a feeling the titanium is a higher grade on the real one. The blade material on this particular one is MagnaCut. The CPM 154 is an option for a slightly cheaper price, but this is MagnaCut at a good HRC, probably well heat treated. Well, definitely well heat treated. Not just at an HRC, but functionally good. This is M390 at, probably Chinese standard M390 ranges. If it's a real M390, I personally think it probably is, because this wasn't like a $50 knife. This was still over $100. This was still not a budget knife. I mean, it's still titanium and M390, or at least it's marketed as that way, and it's still reasonably expensive compared to just a cheap crap Chinese knife. It is. But you also find that sort of I've built up, as time has passed, anecdotal sort of evidence from different channels, different treat testings and everything, like hardness testings, that knives in this similar range, when they're around this price, coming from the China, even when they're the clone kind of things, do actually tend to have. It's not always the case. There's a lot of clones that don't, but I'm saying that are in the same range and realm as this one, oftentimes do actually have the right steel on them. So whether it's heat treated well or not is a total different story. But at this price, I would say it's probably still actual M390. But I can't say that for certain. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Who knows? It's all anecdotal anyway, right? It's just my particular opinion and take on things and such. Yes. So, moving on from that, we move on to the pivot. And the pivot is noticeable as a noticeable difference, whereas this one is perfectly centered, perfectly set, perfectly aligned in there. This one is not. The clone is got gapping and it's kind of cockeyed a little bit, so not as good and not as quality there, most certainly. The action on the real one is also considerably better than the fake one, or the clone. It's not bad here. It's still a shake shot. It's still very consistent and pretty smooth. It's a bit tighter. And not as drop shot. Another thing that is, and I think this is one of the most important differences, is how the tang here is executed. The tang on this one is deeper this way, which is important because both of these have detent ramps, but because of the depth of the tang, when it goes to swing down, it either hits your finger later or it goes past your finger. I mean, you don't want to disengage up here because it's even though it kind of looks like you should be disengaging up here, yeah, you can't really do that. It doesn't work too well. But if you push into the lock bar even halfway up, you can get it to go past, and the tang will not hit your finger, which will allow it to close because you're past the detent ramp. This one, however, you go up here, and the tang, as you can see, pokes out because it's sticking out further lower. And you get sort of this double clutch kind of thing. You can get past it. You have to go real low. But clearly this one's been, designed intentionally and thought out better than this one that was just, the idea was copied. Another difference is the lock bar itself. As you can see, this one has much heavier chamfers and is deeper, where this one, well, you can see it's this flat area is much thicker on this rear one, or the fake one, copy. Does that really do much? No, though it does allow you to get a little deeper, which could possibly increase the odds of getting past the detent ramp a little bit better. So, I mean, it could have an effect, but I don't think it's enough to actually have an effect. Just something to note. Both are these liner locks with very similar milling on the lock bars, and overall the milling is very, very similar. I mean, it is basically identical milling, but execution is where the differences start to creep in, right? If you look at it, see the sheen when I move the real one sort of run up the knife differently. Let's see, if I turn on this light, will you pick it up better? Yeah, watch. Okay, same angle. See that sheen that's running down that knife? Yeah, this one doesn't have it. This one's stonewashed, and it's very reflective, and it's got a sheen to it. This is a bit more dull, and the actual milling lines aren't quite as softened. They're really nice. Like, this is really nice milling, and it's done really well, and I'd be perfectly fine getting this. But this one is softer and smoother and nicer, as the real one should be. The pivot surround is a little bit different. This one's kind of got a gully around it, while this one's got a lip around it. Doesn't really make that much of a difference. One thing that is slightly different for some reason is the real one uses a T10 down here as a body screw and a T8 on the pivot. This is just T8 all around. So, I mean, I don't care. I don't care. They're both good size screws, so I don't care. Pocket clip execution, better on the real one. It is at the tip here, slightly more smoothed off and rounded, so it's a little bit sharper here, but more importantly is, like I said, I think the grade of titanium is probably a little bit lower, which is partially why it's able to be cheaper as it is. This one does not have the same kind of flex. It's got flex, but it's stiffer, and it doesn't have the same kind of retention. If you listen, this is tapping now, because I pulled it out and flexed it once, and it didn't go completely back to true. Can I fix that? Sure. Take the knife apart, take the screw out, bend it back a little bit, it'll be fine. But this one's got a nice flex and nice retention on it, so it's definitely better. All the logos and stuff inside, the number of the knife, the logo up there, none of that exists on the copy, so it's not trying to copy those aspects and stuff like that. And like I said, the sheen and overall finish of the handle is better. Something else that is, I don't know if I'd call it better, but different, is the real one's 3.64 ounces, which is very close to 1 ounce an inch, whereas this clone is 4.09, not 1 ounce an inch. The titanium is a tiny bit thicker, and when you get this knife in hand, it feels a little bit bigger. It's very minute, and it's barely going to be tangible, and you're not going to probably be able to see it on camera. But the chamfers here start earlier. They're at a lower lower angle, so you get a little bit less of the face kind of design, but it starts rounding down sooner, so it actually presents like it's a tiny bit smaller, combined with that slightly thinner titanium. You get a tiny bit of more of a nimble knife, while this one feels a little bit more chunky in the hand. Is it bad? No. It's a different way of doing things, but it is worth noting that you're definitely going to notice that the chamfers on this thing don't go as deep and are more, like this instead of like this. Yes. I believe that is most everything that I want to talk about here, as that's pretty much covers the entire knife. So, I mean, overall, yeah, the real one's a better knife, but this one is a bit wonky with the blade. I'm kind of disappointed with that. This is not terrible. It is centered, strangely. It functions. And even if the steel is a bit softer, this ridiculous geometry is going to make it probably cut and perform pretty damn well for a decent amount of time. Maybe a bit longer than, you know, your standard 60 to 61 HRC M390 might perform, assuming it's around there. Oh, and one thing that I find is interesting is these use a double stop pin, but it's only on one side. Both of them do it. Personally, for stability's sake, I'd like to see a stop pin on both sides contacting. Because if it sort of runs off track, or if it sort of, you know, shifts a little bit, you don't have the other stop pin to kind of stop it from doing that quite as much. So every so often I'll get a time where it like doesn't close quite as smoothly, or like it doesn't drop quite as cleanly, because I think it's probably just shifting a little bit in there. It's not a big deal, and it's not actually hurting anything, but I'd like to see... I like the double stop pin idea, I just like to see one of them go completely through to both sides. That's just my personal input, right? But that's not the difference, so it's not really something I can compare. Overall, these are both really good knives, and like I said, this is probably just a little bit of a weirdo fluky thing on the blade that I'm sure will be something that won't be a problem to address. But yeah, they did a pretty solid job here. It's not as good, it's not as perfect in some of the areas where it really does matter. I mean, of course, the blade is very important and it matters, but like the overall execution and finish of the finer details and stuff, yeah, the real one's better. But yeah, this is okay. And while I don't really support clones, when it comes to clones of expensive, like $1,000 plus knives, this isn't quite there, but it is pretty close, that don't market themselves as the actual thing. Like, you can find a lot of clones that say, hey, this is an actual Benchmade or Spyderco. It just happens to be, you know, $100 less because, hey, look at that, we're giving you a deal. No. Those I don't like. Those are straight up trying to be the real thing, or they're trying to trick you into thinking you're getting something that you're not. This, before it even said Cortex, it said the name of the brand. The one other clone that I have is also it's a clone of a Shirogorov that's like $3,000, and that one too, before it said the name of the knife, which wasn't actually the same as the actual knife, it had the brand name right in front of it, sticking on top of it. So it's clearly not trying to trick you into thinking that it is the real thing. And some of the markings and the logos, while the logo here is pretty much the same, the markings and the finer stuff and the stuff that identifies it as a different knife are absent, or as the real knife are absent, and the same case for the other one. I don't typically do clones, but when it comes to those extremely expensive knives that you just can't get your hands on, this isn't necessarily quite at that level again, but I say I'm willing to give a little bit of leeway if it's a design that you just can't get. And they're copying a design that has long since disappeared, sold out, being nearly impossible to get. And they're certainly not trying to be the real thing. And they're certainly not doing as good a job as the real thing, but yeah. I do make the occasional, like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see why this thing exists. I can kind of accept that this would be something someone would want, and maybe consider it. Doesn't stop me from running the real ones. It doesn't stop decrease the pride of ownership of the real ones for me. And, I mean, obviously, I still have a real one here. So that's my personal view and sort of boundary. But when they're just straight up being, like, trying to be the real thing, no. It's harmful in general, and it's a nasty gray area as is. We don't need it to go even further into just straight up ugly, right? All that said, I have 2 clones. I'm not looking to jump on a bunch of other ones, but you each is entitled to their own view of clones. I'm more of just, there's a certain level when it becomes understandable. If it's a super limited run knife that nobody else is ever going to get the pattern to, you can kind of see why someone would want to clone that. As long as it's not being sold as the real one, maybe I'll give it a pass. But that's just me. Just wanted to put that out there. Here, however, these are very different knives. Surprisingly, both pretty good knives, even with a little bit of flub. But I'm going to end things here and call it. I think I've done a pretty exhaustive look into both of them and comparing how one handles each aspect of itself to the other. So, yeah. Hopefully this was informative or interesting or something. It's a little bit of a different kind of video. I like doing something a little different every now and then. Consider liking, subscribing if you stuck around and seeing this and you liked what you saw or didn't. Even if you didn't, like and subscribe. Yes, that's that, right? But yeah, I'm going to call it here and call my comparison done and say thank you for watching. Have a great day, or continue having a great day, or start having a great day. We're in a we are in a imprecise sort of mindset today. Just it's fit in between the lines. It's somewhere. There's a spectrum. Did you just have a good day? Or are you having a good day? Yeah. Start now, maybe. I don't know what I'm even saying. I'm blathering at the end of here. I always do that. Don't stick around for the blathering. See ya.